one of the things I'd like to start off with is basically what is this group all about, and I'm going to go ahead and share one of my screens real quick, and I'm going to kind of jump in and out of it. But basically, this is the Access Web Apps group. We meet the third Tuesday of every month from 7 to 8:30 Eastern Time, and it's really a way for people to get to learn a little bit about what Access Web Apps are all about. And if you ever visit I'm going to jump into the website real quick. Hold on just a second. And here, I'm going to pull this website over. On the website, we've got AccessUserGroups.org/access-web-apps. In there's an area called videos, and you can see videos from many of the sessions that we've had in the past. We didn't record every session because in some cases we had 2 or 3 people and we were talking about their specific projects, kind of tearing it apart and talking about enhancements. But you can see quite a number of the different ones on there. We've recently talked about Power BI, which is the ability to build graphs and charts and really drill down into your data. And Power BI, I've kind of been preaching about recently, is I think it's one of those things that are really going to be powerful for people to use. And there's what's called a Power BI tile that you can utilize within an Access Web App, which allow you to show a chart or show a map or show bubbles or whatever kind of a graphic you're utilizing for looking at that data or drilling down into that data. You can take that and build it right into your Access Web App. And so we talked a little bit about what Power BI is about in that, and you can really jump into some of these. You can learn about macros. You can learn about the difference between Access Desktop and Web Apps. You can learn about how do Access Web Apps fit within your company structure. And by the way, my name's Andy Tabis. I kind of run this group. My company is WorkSmart Database Masters. Probably 65 to 70% of what we do is Access, but then we do a lot of Excel and ASP.NET and some Alpha stuff and some other technologies as well. So just so you know who's kind of leading this group here. So one of the things we like to do with Access Web Apps at the beginning of groups, whenever we have any new people, is kind of show you how to create an Access Web App from scratch, and really how easy it is to do it, and so that you can take this and be able to do it yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop in my SharePoint site. So Jack or anybody, let me know if you can't see my screen showing this info. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump into it. Basically, to build an Access Web App, you jump into Site Contents, and when you're in Site Contents, you can just click on Add an App, and you can see these red ones that I've done all with the Access logo. These are ones that I've built for playing around with. The one that I use every 2 or 3 days is this Wisdom Projects, and I'll show you that. That's basically our customers and how we keep track of projects internally within WorkSmart. So I'm going to make sure I can see everybody. Okay, so to create an Access Web App, we just go ahead and click on Add an App. And at this point, you can, I usually just type in ACC and hit Enter. That way it'll find Access really quickly. And then at this point, I can just click on this Access app to actually build it. So what we'll do is we're going to build a web app from scratch. I'm going to go ahead, since this is January 19th, I'm just going to say January 19th, 2016 demo. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Create. At this point, it's going to create a kind of a placeholder for where that database is going to belong. You can see here that it says new, and when it's done with that, it will make it so that it's available to start adding tables. So right now I can see that cleared off, and at this point I can click on it, and it will take me in, and I can actually start building my app. So here's Access. It says I'm going to open this app in Access, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to download an ACCDW file. And so on the bottom of the screen it says, January 19, 2016 demo ACCDW. When I click on this, it will open up Access, and it will open up basically a blank database, and this is where I can start adding in fields. So, and hold on tight. It's asking me to log in again, so I want to make sure I grab the right user. That's one of the things when you work with this is that if you're a consultant like me, a lot of times that I'm working with different clients' copy of Office 365, or I'm on their site doing things, and so in order for me to connect to the right one, you have to kind of log in. So hold on tight for a second. I get to grab my login information here. Okay. I use a little program called LastPass, which saves all of my passwords. So and it also allows you to generate like 16-character passwords, which are difficult for other people to guess. And the one problem with doing that is that I don't know what the passwords are, and so I have to I always have to go back in and grab that information so I have it. And so what this will do is it will take me to this area where we can start adding tables. Microsoft has a lot of really good templates that are automatically built into the system. So I like to pull up something, maybe a tasks database or something like that. But there's many different ones you can choose: tasks, employees. You can do projects. You can choose a recipe database, whatever works for you. But I like it a lot because it really does a lot of it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on tasks. And what this is doing now is it's going to grab all of the tables that are part of the tasks template, and it not only adds the tables, but, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the navigation pane. That quickly, it added the employees table and tasks, and it also added several forms. The two main forms that we utilize here are task lists and task data sheet. And a data sheet is similar to a data sheet that we have in Access Desktop, but with when you're dealing with Access web apps, especially when you're dealing with an internet browser, it has to be a real form. It has to be a live form. It can't just be dropping in a data sheet view where you just have a single form and then a data sheet. You can't do it that way. You actually have to have a form called data sheet. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump in. So it created these 6 different types. There's also a by group and by status. That's what you see here. And what we're going to do first, before I jump in and show you the design, and I'm going to show you the functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Launch App. And I'm going to drag that back over. And if I start talking and you don't see what it is I'm talking about, let me know. I've got 3 monitors here, and I have on occasion I've talked about things that people can't see, so I'll attempt not to do that. But so in here now we're in a browser window, and this is the beauty of an Access web app versus an Access desktop. Is that when you can build the database using Access, and you can invite people to use that database just by giving them a link, a hyperlink to the page, to the database, and they can use it without having to install Microsoft Access or Access Runtime. It'll work in any browser. It'll work on whether it's on an iPad or anything like that. I do not encourage people to try do it on a phone. It's just not the environment isn't really conducive for that. But it works out really well on a laptop or anything that has a larger browser window. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and just add a quick employee so you can see how it's done. And you can see it's cut off some things, so we would want to make some formatting changes. But this is the area where we actually type in the information of the person. It automatically takes us into a brand new blank record. And so I'm just going to put in 1, and I'm going to pick on Jack since he's here. So I can put in Jack Stockton, I can put in the company name, all that kind of information. What you'll see along with seeing and actually let's go ahead and put in so in here you can see Jack Stockton. Now, when I click on the save, you'll see up here there's an option group, and by default it shows you these 5 icons. So you've got plus for add, delete, edit, save, and cancel. When I click on save, it automatically saves this record to the database, which is a SQL Azure database in the back end. It's within SharePoint, but it's a SQL Azure database. And it automatically adds Jack to this list here. And what's cool is as we add in more and more people, I'm going to go ahead and add in myself here, Andy Tabis, and I'm going to save that. It'll add it to the list. I'll add in another employee. We'll put in Tom. I think I misspelled that actually. I think it's IE. And save that. But what it does is it, as you save it, it automatically adds it to the list here. And the nice thing about this list is it's this search box here is searching for any field within this page at all. So, for instance, if I search for the letter O, for instance, it would find Jack Stockton and Tom. It doesn't matter if you're searching first name, last name, or a state. It'll search for these characters anywhere within here. You'll also see that it automatically built in a subform for tasks, and you've got the ability to add. You can immediately add tasks down here for this person. So that's the first view, is the single form view, basically. And if we jump on Datasheet, we can see this data in a Datasheet form. One of the buttons that you'll see that's added here is a little download button. And if I click on that download, it will take this spreadsheet, download it to Excel, and now I can click on that, and it will open in Excel. I'm going to go ahead and enable editing. And it automatically creates, to me it looks like a green bar paper or a blue bar paper because every other line is colored. But it automatically turns on the auto filter as well. So you've got the ability here to automatically, just like we're in Excel, so you can narrow down the information that we're looking at. So that's one of the features that they have. I'll go ahead and close that out. And so you've got your list view, you've got your data sheet view, and then you can also group it. So you can group things by the employee type, or you might want to group it by company, or might want to group it by any other thing within the system. You're just choosing how you want to group that data. So it automatically creates these views for us. And so now let's jump into kind of the design. And actually, I'm going to stop for a second and just ask, because I have a tendency to talk really fast. Does anybody have any questions right now?
This is Rona.
Yes.
I'm asked a dumb question. I'm sorry, this is my first
time. No,
time.
please. And
I'm so used to developing it in desktop.
Uh-huh.
So whichever format or what's the best way program you did with Access carries over to this.
Yeah. So you can't. Let me. I want to word this the right way. If you create a database in desktop version, you can't transfer like forms or reports or any of those kind of things into an Access web app. You can, however, import tables into an Access web app, which will build your forms for you. And so it builds those views basically for you, and then you can edit those forms to fit your particular needs. But there's within an Access web app, it does not use the VBA language. Everything is done within the macro language, and so none of that. You can't really copy a form, and you can't copy any VBA. You really have to jump in and really learn the macro language, which, as I've told people before, it's very different. For a person like me, I've been using and programming in Access since '94, and I think Jack has actually beat me by, I think he started in '92 or '93, but I started with version 2.0 of Access, and everything I've been doing for more than 2 decades is, writing VBA. And so writing things within the macro language is very, it's taken me a little while to get used to, because you just kind of have to think through, okay, I know how to do it in VBA. How do I go about doing those kind of things within macros? And that's why we recorded the one video about the macros, the macro, and how to utilize those in different kinds of things. Because there's for many of the things there is an equal way of doing it in macros. So good. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I read in the book, and I've searched Google and all that. I've read something to that similar.
Okay,
to that
good. Good.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, the way I position Access Web Apps right now is it is a powerful tool. For the kind of stuff that I've done, I think it works out really well for a team environment where you're you have maybe a division in the company that's utilizing the data within it. AndVe got another client that utilizes it for, they built it for themselves, but they have a screen for their vendors to log in. And in this case, they ship steel from Germany to Detroit, Michigan. And so their vendor jumps online and posts when that steel is going on the freighter and when to expect it and that kind of stuff. And so they have different vendors that they can log in and keep track of it, as well as what to do with that steel once it arrives in Detroit, Michigan. And so you can do things like that. There's an app that I developed over the course of about 3 years called waterfallcalc.com, And it's 2 years ago when I spoke with the two Kevins that came to the POG conference where Jack was. Both of them said that it was the largest Access web app that they'd ever seen, and it was very powerful. But I was really taking that app to the extreme, and I'd hit some kind of growing pains along the way where I started getting into some things that Access Web Apps just wasn't appropriate for, and we ended up rewriting it in ASP.NET. So we still have a flavor out there for that's on the Access Web App, but it's not as used as much as our ASP.NET version. But yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm going to jump back over to Access. And so in Access, we're back. We see our navigation panes, we see the tables, and we can see the forms. And I'm just going to kind of jump into these so you can kind of see what's going on. If I look at design view of a table, you can see that it's very similar to what you see in a desktop table. This is SQL Azure backend. So you'll see some of the items. You'll see a data type that's more like SQL than you would see in Access. But you do have all of your text and hyperlink and long text. And within one of the things that I think takes a little while for people to get used to is that there's no relationships window within Access Web Apps. So what you have are what are called groups. And so you have a group which is a lookup, and you create your lookup, and then under modify lookups, you can see the choices that you have. So in this case, for group, we've got full-time, part-time, contract workers. And so that's how they utilize relationships instead of the way we're used to seeing relationships in Access Desktop. But whenever again, one of the things I really like is if I'm in here and I want to create, let's say, a brand new table, and I don't know, I'm just going to create. I'm going to do a blank table real quick, and in fact, I'm just going to do something that's just totally is unrelated to what we're working on. So if I just create like a recipe kind of a thing, and I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I create that table. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so it didn't like that. But generally, when you create a table, it will automatically create your forms for you. And that's one of the nice things about the Access Web App is that with a desktop, you still have to go back. You have to create the different forms that you want to utilize it. With Access Web Apps, it goes and it creates that for you. On the downside, I'm going to go ahead and close this. On the downside is that, and I'm going to close employees here, and I'm going to open up, let's say, the employees list. I'm going to go ahead and open this in Design View. Oh, that's weird. It's asking me to log back in. That's odd. Hold on just a second. Let me grab my login again. So now I'm in the employees list, and one of the interesting things is that again we're working with a web browser version of the database, and so in desktop apps you can actually overlap controls if you want to, and you can hide or unhide them as needed. With an Access Web App, you can't have controls that are over each other. And so what you'll find is if you want to drag fields around, it will automatically make room for it wherever you're wanting to put it. And so that's kind of one difference between Access Web Apps and Access Desktop. Also, if now that we've changed these fields around, and let's say we want to go and save it, normally if you add a field to like the employees table, let's say there's something that's missing, let's say fax number, for instance. I don't happen to see fax right here. So let's say you're adding a fax number. If it's a brand new list view form, when you add a field to the employees table, it'll automatically add it to the form. But now that I've moved things around, it's kind of broken that ability to auto add a field. And so now if I were to add a field to employees, I would have to manually come back over here, find the field, and then I can just drag and drop it where I want it to go. And I'm going to delete that out. And so that's kind of one of the things to keep in mind. But there's a lot of customization that you can still do with these. As you move these, you can make these any size you want. I can still grab. I can move these around, change the text box to be below the label or whatever you want to do with it. So you can do all those kind of things. I can grab all this. I can move it up. I can grab all of these labels. Whoops. I can make those a little bit bigger so it all fits, that kind of stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
When you make changes and all that, is that available for all the users, or?
That's a great question. Once you, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to look in the published version of it again. I'm going to go ahead and launch the app in a browser again, and I'm going to pull that back over. And what you'll see is right now, anybody who uses this database basically has admin rights. In the top right-hand corner here is a little setup. And in here, I can choose Customize and Access, or I can choose Apps for Office. By choosing Customize and Access, it's allowing you to download that file that you can open up in Access and customize it the way you want. But you don't have to give people admin rights to it. You can invite them to use that database without giving them admin rights to be able to choose Customize and Access. And so behind the scenes, what's happening is there's SharePoint has different properties like contribute versus being able to actually modify the system. And so you just need to be able to give people the correct rights. And I believe that there's a video. Yeah, I believe that there's, basically it's permissions. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's permissions of how to do it. You can also, and I believe this is still true with 2016, but you can, even if a person does not have a SharePoint account or Office 365, you can invite them to use your app, and they can open up the app. They can use it just like you can, but they can't do anything in Design View because they don't have SharePoint. And so with every one Office 365 license that you have, you can, at least this is how it was 6 months ago. I don't think it's changed. But you could invite up to 500 people. You can invite them to use your app, and they would use it within a browser, but they could not use the SharePoint side. So, and I'm going to jump over back to site here. So within SharePoint, we've got the ability to upload documents. You can have a calendar. You can create your own team site. Do all those kind of things with it. Instead of just having this one app there. So that's a great question. Let's take okay. In the chat window, I see that Jack posted the website pog.com/conference if you're interested in learning about the POG conference. And let's see. Could you show an easy way to allow users to view a pre-built query from a web app? It doesn't need to be fancy. It's for internal use. So with a query itself cannot be open with a web app. You can view a data sheet that a query is based on, but you can't create a query for just a viewable query. So you have to have a view. They call them a view, which is really a form, but you have to have a data sheet based on a view. So you could go in and create your query, and then you could build a data sheet view or a query based on that.
Is that something you could just demonstrate quickly?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Simple query.
Yep. So here we've got employees, and let's say I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these fields, drop them down, and let's say that I only want to see, I'm going to pick on Jack again and put in Oregon. And so yeah, it's weird. It's a bombing for some reason. It's possible that I logged into two different things. I'm going to retry that. Yeah, it's running into a problem with the server. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. But basically, once you create your query, I'm going to go ahead and just close this for now, is that you can just take that, and let's say that this is a query, you can click on blank view or list view, and it will do the view based on that. Yeah, for some reason it's losing my login. I'm going to see, did I? So in here, here's our view, and we'd be able to choose our query there, and at that point we can drop whatever we would want to from the query into this. But I don't know, for some reason it's losing.
So I just make a new view, and then identify the record source as my query. That's
correct.
Okay.
Yep. That's all there is to it.
And because it's a view, it'll show up on the task list or automatically, and I can decide whether I want to hide it or not. But.
That's absolutely right, because here this is kind of our like a built-in window or a navigation, if you want to call that. And so you can have your forms. In fact, as you add pieces there, it'll automatically appear on the list. If you don't want it to show, there's different settings here. So you can hide it, you can lock it, you can rename it, whatever you want. And then you can even have an icon. So if you don't like the star, if it's employees, you might want to have a picture of a person there. Or if it's tasks, you might want to have a clock there or something. And so you can choose those kind of things. But by default, when you add a table, it will automatically add it to this list, and then it's up to you whether you want to choose to hide it or not. If you hide it in Design View, you'll still see the hidden one, but when you go to launch the app, then you cannot see it. And so when in the Waterfall Calc app that I mentioned earlier, we that app is used by about more than 20 mortgage banks across the country, across the U.S. And we did not want the banks to be able to see the employees from other banks, or even what other banks were using it. So, in essence, we hid the employees, we hid the mortgage banks, we hid the loans, and so we were completely controlling all of that information so that nobody else could see it. And you can also control what people see using internal security. So, you know, the one thing about inviting somebody to see the app is that what they're seeing everything that you would normally see in the browser world. And so to prevent some of that, you can we actually had a second layer of security where, based on what the user's email address was, they may go to one form or a different form. So they'll see different information depending on who they're logged in as. It takes an extra process to do that, because you have to match up what their email address is with what the email address, the work email that's stored within SharePoint, in order to make that security happen. But that's one of the things that we also did. But again, one of the beauties of using an Access web app is that it's in a browser. So if you've got you've got a company and they, you don't have to buy 50 copies of Access, or worry about installing a runtime version of Access on their machine in order to make it work. They can just open it. And so I'll tell you, one of our clients that we're working on right now is the World Wildlife Fund. And with them, they have people from all over the world, Nairobi, from everywhere. And it's a perfect fit for that kind of a situation, because they can log in as long as they have an internet connection, a decent internet connection. They can log in from anywhere and use it. And you don't have to. The IT person doesn't have to worry about installing Access or runtime on that machine to make it work. So it really works out well there. Yeah, and Jack pointed out in the forum that you don't have to have Access installed to work with it, but if you need to go into this area where we're making design changes, you must have Microsoft Access or Office 365 in order to make changes to the database. So if they didn't have Access installed, they could download it, but they couldn't do anything with it, anyway, that way. Great questions. Any other questions while we're in that talking about this? All right, so far so good. I'm going to show you a couple more things in here, and then there's kind of something I want to kind of talk about with the group. So I want to just show you a couple more things. Is editing the database, like the views, is very similar to how you do it with the Access Desktop. You can click on a field, and you can see what the data is based on. So you can see the control source. You can set the default value. You can set some of the formatting. So you've got a tooltip, whether it's visible, whether it's enabled, and the hint. And then you also have this little lightning bolt, which are actions. And this is where we would normally go into like a builder to add, you know, events that would happen if you click on it or after you update it. Notice here, though, we only have two actions. We've got on click and after update. If you're used to standard desktop, you've got, you know, everything. You've got, you know, before update, you've got on click, you've got, I mean, there's dozens of them, you know, on got focus, on lost focus, after insert, you've got all those different things. So you've only got two different actions to work with, but these are the two that most people usually use. But you've got those. And then once you jump into this, you'll see this is where you can build. This is where you build your macro. That's connected to it. So you've got things like go to control, open a pop-up, save a record, set a property, and you can do different things like that. But there's, instead of looping through a record set, you have to run what's called a data macro. And a data macro allows you to do those things that for each record do this. Or look up a record that meets this criteria, and so you can use a data macro to do those kind of things, whereas what we have here is a standard macro. And then you can also see that when we're in here, I'm going to go to, like here, you've got a hyperlink for like web page, and you've got, this is kind of your subform, and you can have a subform that has multiple tabs, like we're used to seeing with that. The different choices are above here. So you've got your, first of all, notice in formatting you don't have a back color. You only have a fore color of that. There are ways within a macro that you can set a back color, but you don't have all the different choices that we're used to. But you've got your text box, you know, and many of the same controls, but there are some really nice ones. One's called autocomplete control, and it's an autocomplete control is kind of like a combo box, but it can be anywhere within the field. So if you've got the word Andrew and you type in ND, Andrew would still appear. Whereas with a combo box, you have to start with AN in order to see the entire word. So you've got some different functionality with those kind of things. So great questions. A question popped up. Is there a book about Access apps? And there is a book. There's a book called Access 2013 Programming, and it's written by Teresa Hennig and Ben Clothier, George Hepworth, both friends of mine, Doug Udovich, and so yes, it's Professional Access 2013 Programming. I haven't seen anything for 2016, but in all honesty, the 2013 would probably give you everything that you need to for the 2016 version. The big thing that really is the difference between 2013 and in 2016 is that 2016 Access Web Apps allows you to run that on-premise on the SharePoint within your network, your local network, as opposed to with 2013 it requires you to have SharePoint Online, Office 365, and you're utilizing SQL Azure in the cloud. So another really good question. Good. So yeah, so those are all great questions. Keep them coming. And if anybody wants me to demonstrate something more within Access I'll certainly do that. But what I want to talk about, since this is our first meeting of the year, I wanted to kind of talk to people and try and get some feedback of what kind of things that you'd like to see coming up in the future. I know last year we talked about macros, and we talked about, desktop versus web apps. And in fact, I'll go ahead and pop up that website again so you can see the videos that we had. So these were the different ones that we had last year. So we talked about no-code solutions, which are basically utilizing macros, but we went into it with kind of, instead of using VBA, how do you do these kind of things in macros? That's kind of what that was about. We talked about functions. We built in apps for Office and those kind of things. But I wanted to get feedback from the group, and I'm totally cool with repeating sessions that we did last year, if you want to re-see those kind of things. But for instance, one of the sessions that I definitely want to have this upcoming year is really digging in deeper into Power BI. We have this recorded session of what Power BI is about and what it can be used for, but we did not integrate Power BI tiles into an Access web app. So something that I thought would be good for the group to see is how you can create a Power BI dashboard and then integrate that into your Access web app. So that's one of the things I'd like to do upcoming. But I want to find out from the group, what other kind of things would you like to see in this next year? What would you like to see a demo on, or if you've last year we had the opportunity to have 3 guest speakers. One was George Hepworth, who wrote. He was one of the authors of that book I just mentioned. We also had Judy Jones, who's been doing quite a bit with Access web apps. And we also had Tom Wilfert from Detroit. And both Judy and Tom work with me on several of our company projects as well. So I kind of want to open up the floor and say, in addition to extending, and I'm going to write this in here, extending Power BI to Access web apps, what kind of sessions would you like to see in 2016?
This is Charles. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
For me, just about anything that happens is worthwhile for me, because I haven't had the opportunity to find a paying project that I could work on. And
okay.
Of course, that's usually where you learn. But I'm committed to continuing to develop this way, and by just listening to the conversation, going over, even repeating the same material, but just keeping it fresh in my mind in terms of what can be done and how it can be done. So that's just like an overall, affirmation and appreciation for all of the webinars.
Cool. Well, and one of the things I could talk about, if you're interested, is how do you get a paying project with an Access web app? If that's something you're interested in, I can certainly talk about that.
And along those lines, the issue that I run up against, and we've discussed it off and on, but again, since I didn't have a project, it was a little bit harder to implement something once I figured it out. But it's the step-by-step process of setting up a database. Not the basics, because we already have the forms and everything, but after you have the database basically developed, what the process for setting permissions so that people can only enter data, but they can't make modifications. Just all those little things that you would do, especially if there's 2 routes to do that. One where we're hosting it on through my own. We're evaluators, so we set it up on our own website, Access 365 account, and they're logging in and entering data that we're collecting. And
Right.
then the other side of that would be, as you described, setting it up for logging into another agency's account and then doing the modifications and that sort of thing. There's a lot of ins and outs that's the whole arena of permissions, and it's kind of like the networking side is something that I've never really fooled with, and just, I've been narrowly focused on just the VBA and database structure and stuff like that. So that's like the whole area that is outside of my current comfort range.
Gotcha. All right, good. So I wrote down process for setting permissions, inviting users, doing work for other clients, and how to install it on their sites. And I mentioned go ahead.
And one other thing would just be having clients have access to it on our site for only data entry.
Gotcha.
And you did describe that you had that happening, but sharing the database for only data entry, and viewing. But
right, yeah, and that's I've got that Wisdom Projects that I mentioned earlier. That's a database that I created that only I make design changes to, but people, our folks will log in and put in, what time they spent with clients, and putting their, the invoice amounts and all that kind of stuff in there as well. So yeah, that would be great.
That's another thing is that I've set up a simple thing for within our office, people who are already part of the team and like that. But this is talking about someone who is not part of our team, someone who's going to be coming from outside, and they're going to be logging in and have a login that I may have to manually create. They won't use necessarily the Microsoft one, I can imagine all kinds of workarounds. You give them a Microsoft account that everybody uses, but when they get there, they have to do another login step. So that would be the ideas about making. You described a little bit about setting up people's logins and permissions so that they could only see their data and query these sources, stuff like that. So especially for people who are outside of the organization. Because the first thing I ran into, I was going to build something for school districts, and then I discovered that everybody had to have their own Microsoft login, and I was talking about, 50 people who are going to be logging in and just putting in quarterly their school reports. And no, we'll do, something simple like, SurveyMonkey.
Right. And, it's interesting you mentioned that Judy has a similar application, but it's for a nursing home, and where the nurses go around with iPads and take the orders of the elderly people of what they want to have for lunch that day or dinner that evening. And so
I remember that. That was amazing.
Yeah, she really did a good job with that. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I see somebody else posted online, agreed they'd like to see Power BI integration. They'd also like to see us build a hybrid app again. And so I'm going to go ahead and add in building a hybrid app. And when I don't know if hybrid app is really a Microsoft technical term. I use it to kind of describe creating an Access web app, but creating an Access desktop database that will connect to the data in that app. Because one of the things that you'll notice that within Access web apps is that we can come here under Advanced. We've got queries, we've got views, which are forms, we've got macros. What are we missing? We're missing reports. There are no reports because Access Web Apps is a browser-based system, and so that in order to view a report, you really need to do that either from Access Desktop, or you can create a form that looks kind of like a report, but if you go to print, you still get all that junk from the browser window. And so, I create what I call a hybrid app, which is both an Access web app and that. One of the things I also demonstrated last year, and it was really something that Juan Soto and I did, and I'm going to pull this back up, is we did a demonstration for people at the MVP Summit back in this past fall. And what we did is we took that whole report one step further, is because we were like, okay, the one problem with an Access web app is that you can't you can't view a report. Well, if you have a Microsoft desktop, people that use an Access web app still can't run that report, and so you're going back to requiring people to have that. And so what we ended up doing is we built some reports using SSRS, which are reporting services, SQL Server reporting services, and then we actually called those reports from an Access web app to actually view that report. So from the user standpoint, they didn't even realize that the report was coming from SharePoint reporting services. It just showed up. And it was really cool because what we did is we showed how to download a report to PDF view. We showed how to display it on the screen. We showed it how to download it in Excel or even view it in Excel on your screen. And it's something that Microsoft was so impressed with that they asked us to record it. I don't know if you're familiar with their Channel 9 blog, but we went into their recording studio at Microsoft in Redmond, and we actually recorded that session for the Channel 9 blog. And they're supposed to be posting that in either June or July. When they do that, we'll make that announcement. But in the meantime, I think what I'll do is go ahead and is add calling SSRS reports from an Access web app, because with that studio, you only have like 10 or 15 minutes to present, so we couldn't go into it really in a lot of depth. So that's something I can certainly talk about as well. So good. So we're starting to generate a pretty good list here. Extending Power BI. How do you get a paying customer for Access web apps? The whole process of setting permissions and inviting users, and doing work for others so that you can share that database and that person can only do data entry, not download. Talking about utilizing a login to show a specific form for a user depending on how they're logging in. We talked a little bit about, we can talk about building a hybrid app, calling SSRS reports. Let's see, I see Charles is saying exploring all kinds of various strategies for reports.
This is Charles again. The SSRS reports is definitely really impressive, amazing, but there's a lot of work involved there. So the simple workarounds, that alternatives that we could do for some kind of report, right?
Sure. Okay, that sounds great too. Very cool. Yeah, so anything else that people would like to see? All right, Alan is saying he's good. Yeah, last year we had, like I said, we had Judy presented, George Hepworth presented, Tom presented. I'd like to get Jillian in here and see if he can give us a demonstration of his HR app. So I'm gonna put that down to see if he'd be willing to do that. That kind of goes along with the how to get a paying customer, but it's a little different in that when, like, with World Wildlife Fund, you know, they hired us to build an app for them that was just for them. Whereas when Jillian created that, it was for and I should put it Julius Kirkness. It is really something that he created to be sold in the store. So I'll go ahead and add that and see if we can get him to come visit us as well. Also, Kevin Bell, we mentioned him earlier. Kevin used to work for Microsoft. He was let go as part of the layoffs, but he's just a really, really smart guy. And he was very involved with Access Web Apps as well. We might be able to get him to come in and talk about some of his favorite customization. All right. So any other enhancements that people would like to see, or not enhancements, but like meeting topics that you'd like to hear about? Okay. Well, if you come up with any, go ahead and post them in the chat, and I'll see. Or email me. I'll go ahead and put in my email here, so in case anybody wants to reach out to me directly, you can certainly do that. You can also reach, if you jump on the website, you can do it there. But here's my email address, and if anybody wants to read. Okay, so while people are still thinking about other topics that they want, we try and use the last 15 minutes of our meeting for kind of Q&A type things, or if people want to, just if there's any specific questions that you have, or if there's a feature you want to see, or if if there's any tips you want me to talk about, let me know, and we can go through those, or whatever we want. We got about 15 minutes left, so whatever you're interested in talking. I remember Kevin, in one of his demonstrations, he's a big baseball card collector, and he had created a neat database that would show the pictures of the baseball cards. And that was kind of a neat thing to see as well. When you're in Access, where you have this list of your last name, first name, kind of a thing in the company, you also actually have the ability to have a picture here, what they call a thumbnail. And so if you have a picture in the record, let's say this is an employee table. So let's say you had a picture of the employee, you'd actually be able to see the thumbnail picture of the employee right on this list. And so one of the things that I described last year is that with the Waterfall Calc app that I created, I utilized that thumbnail a little bit differently, because with the Waterfall Calc, there were once the calculation for the mortgage default was there, we wanted to have an easy way for people to spot which loans had already been processed or not. And so there's different, not to bore you with the different categories, but there's what's called forbearance and loan modification and HAMP and different things like that, repayment. So you got 4 different statuses. And we utilized an icon which showed the status instead of showing a picture of the person, because it wasn't an employee list, it was a loan list, so we didn't really have a picture of, we didn't really need a picture of the people that owned it, so that was one way we utilized that feature. Yep, and Tom jumped on. He said that he's hearing some background. So if people aren't talking, if you could mute your microphone, that would be great. I heard a dog bark in the background, and it wasn't mine. But sometimes when people are come across the world, especially, you'll hear that feedback. So here's a couple other ones. Could you call a web service from an AWA or integrate it with Google or Bing Maps? Yes, that's a great question. So and in fact, I posted, I'm going to pull this up again, is this video, building apps for Office into your business apps. I'm going to start it, but I'm going to see if I can mute it because I don't want it. But in this video, let me come toward the end so you can see it. So in this video, you'll see that we actually took Bing Maps and integrated that into the web app. And that is when in Access in the top right, when you're, I'm going to go ahead and open it up back in the browser window again. In the top right, there's this little settings, and it says apps for Office. So that is a feature of, that's what Apps for Office is the ability to add in things like Bing Maps. And when we were talking a little bit about the things that people would like to see, I went ahead and I put in there extending Power BI, which is really tiles, Power BI tiles, to Access Web Apps. But I can also add in, let's see, integrating other apps for Office into Access Web Apps, because I think that's, we're used to, if there are companies within the Access desktop world that release like an OCX control that gives you a spinner, or it gives you a like a slider type of control that doesn't come with Access by default. And so really the only way to extend Access Web Apps is, and it's running this, let me close that out. So the way to really extend Access Web Apps is using Apps for Office. So that's something we can certainly talk about. Yeah, and if it's not an app for Office, you can't integrate it yet. So I did for the mortgage servicing product I created. I did create one built-in feature, which is, if you remember, in the early days of Excel, they a lot of people were using these pictographs. And what a pictograph is, and I'm going to pull up, I just Googled it and I'll pull it over. A pictograph is showing, like here for a donut shop, it'll say show pictures of donuts, or for a teaching, you can show pictures of an apple, or I have no idea what those are. Maybe those are apples too. But you can show a picture instead of just having a bar chart. And so I'm going to close that out. But that was one of the things that I built for the mortgage servicing industry app, was the ability to have a little pictograph built in. Now, it was very small because it only allowed you to show dollar signs because I was working with loans. I figured that's that would be something good to see. But that was our venture into creating an Office app for Office into it. Here's another question. If an Access desktop app is password protected, will the web app also ask for a password? And that's a good question. The two things are not tied together. So when you build your web app is different than your Access desktop app. You can build a web app and invite people to that web app that does not require them to enter a password, although for the most part you'll want people to have a Windows Live ID or a Hotmail .com address to utilize your app. But what some people do is they'll share that app with people and they'll give everyone the same login and password because they don't care what people can or can't see. It gets them into the app and they're just sharing it that way. But it certainly does not use the same password protection that the Access desktop app does. Now, taking that one step further is that if the data behind an Access web app is SQL Azure, and so that to get at that data, you can get at that data from a desktop app. You can get at that data, but you require knowing what that SQL name and server and password are, and also when you're passing those along to a user, you can give them read-only access or read-write access as part of that. So that is another place where you could password protect that part of your system if you are sharing a desktop app that's connected to your Access web app. So I hope that answers that question. So great questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? Or I've gotten 3 thanks in the chat window, so that's great. So, well, good. I appreciate you joining us. I think that these are great topics. So what I'll do is I'll work on building the calendar for 2016 and get these posted on the website so that people can kind of plan early to attend these. And I think these are great. I think this is going to be a really neat year. I'm seeing a lot of expansions on the horizon coming, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So. So again, I appreciate everyone joining. If you have anything that you want to share privately, please email me, Andy at WorkSmartDB, like database, WorkSmartDatabase.com, Andy at WorkSmartDB.com, or you can jump on the website, and I'll pull that up again as well. So this is the website. If you go to AccessUserGroups.org, you can find Access web apps there, or you can go directly to AccessUserGroups.org/access-web-apps. And if you can put in a topic request there if you want to, if you have some other ideas of something that you want to share. Or if you just have an idea you want to bounce off of me, or maybe you've got a project that you just need a little push in the right direction, I'm happy to help any way I can that way as well. So, well, I appreciate everyone joining. It's great when we got a good group of people and get a good dialogue going. So I appreciate all your ideas and chiming in. And so I'll go ahead and close this down. And like I said, I'll save this so that if any of you want to rewatch it at another time, it'll be posted within the next 3 or 4 days to the website. So thanks again. I appreciate